Welcome, and thanks for joining us. I'm Lynn Murphy, and this is Stephen Alemán.
Thanks, Lynn. Nice to be here with you.
We're with Disability Rights Texas and are here to update students with disabilities and their parents about what you should know going into the 2018-2019 school year. Topics that we'll discuss today include TEA's Corrective Action Plan, updates in transition planning, and school safety in action. We'll also follow up today's live event with a newsletter that will offer resources to help you learn more about each of the topics we'll discuss today. Stephen, let's start by discussing updates regarding the federal investigation of special education in Texas and the corrective action plan required for those documented violations of law. We know that the Texas Education Agency, or TEA, has responded to federal findings that they have failed to monitor districts in their delivery of special education services to students with disabilities. Can you talk about the agency's response to the corrective action plan?
Sure. As a reminder to our audience, the U.S. Department of Education has been reviewing special education system in Texas because of the state policy to encourage school districts to keep the number of students with disabilities at or below a benchmark of 8.5%. Oftentimes referred to as the 8.5% special education cap. At the beginning of this year in January, the federal government did indeed find that the Texas Education Agency violated the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Because Texas broke the law, it had to come up with a plan to fix those areas where school districts were not taking the proper action to serve students with disabilities. It's important for everyone to know that the corrective action plan really goes into effect this coming new school year. While there are many parts of the plan, there are two areas I want to highlight today. One part of the plan is for those students not yet identified as a student with a disability. The other part is for those students who are now on IEPs, individualized education programs. First, for those students who are still being left out, schools this fall must make an extra effort that's going to be called targeted outreach so that those students can be reached and referred for an initial evaluation for special educational services. An initial evaluation is the first step in the process to get special education services. Schools will also be required this coming school year to start to track and report the number of requests for individual evaluations. That's so that there's some accountability to ensure that they are responding to requests for entry into the special education system. Second, for those students who are already in the system with an IEP, the committee that writes the IEP, called the ARD Committee, the Admission Review and Dismissal Committee, must consider whether any delays in referrals now entitle the student to compensatory services. Compensatory services are those services which make up for the student what he or she should have been receiving all along in educational benefits.
And for families who believe that their children fall into that first category of having not received services, what are their next steps?
In the past, there were two main ways that schools kept students with disabilities in other systems, which are not in themselves bad systems, but not always the best solution because full access to special education services was not allowed. Section 504 services do help some students with disabilities, but does not go as far as special education. So if you are a parent who believes that Section 504 is not enough for the needs of your child, you should ask the district for a special education evaluation. And do know that you do not need to wait until the first day of this coming fall semester. You can ask today. Likewise, general education intervention systems such as RTI, Response to Intervention, was also used to help students with disabilities, but obviously cannot be tailored like special education. We offer the same advice. If you think that RTI does not really help your child, and did not provide any evidence of progression last school year, and you suspect that a disability is a reason why your student did not progress, ask for a special education evaluation now or at the beginning of the coming school year.
During the last legislative session, Senate Bill 748, relating to transition planning, was passed and will go into effect in the upcoming school year. Tell us about the impact this has on high school age students and their parents in particular as they plan for the transition out of the public school system?
Thanks, Lynn. As students get older, and especially when they enter high school, the focus is really on what are you going to do next? Get a job, go to college, get career training. It is no different for students with disabilities. The issue, of course, is that the disability might pose some challenges, but we know with effort and planning, those challenges can be overcome, and students with disabilities can go on and do what all young adults do, live independently and move on into adulthood. The bill that you mentioned was passed in 2017, but is now just coming into effect. It tries to help students with disabilities by making sure the process that we call transition planning has all the elements to fully enable the young person to be ready for adulthood. So when the ARS committee meets, the state law is now asking that some additional things be discussed and addressed in that individualized education program or IEP. Most important, we'll be planning on developing decision-making skills and self-determination skills by the student. By this, we mean that a student with a disability can understand adult decisions around money, housing, and other big choices in life and have a chance to do what he or she wants, not be dependent on another adult to make decisions for her or for him. The new state law also adds new requirements for schools to share information about the legal process on guardianships and alternatives to guardianships. As you may know, under guardianship, the person with a disability has most, if not all, of their legal rights taken away, and another person controls the person's life. We understand that a guardian will be needed by some, but we want to avoid that situation if at all possible. So now schools will be sharing information about an exciting new legal option called supported decision-making. Under supported decision-making, the person with a disability gets to keep his or her legal rights with the understanding that a supporter who is picked by the person with the disability will be there to help navigate those big life choices. If you do not get any information about supported decision-making, let the school know that you're expecting to hear about it.
It's also important to remember that transition planning isn't just relevant to high school students. It's a planning process that assists all students with disabilities as they consider their options beyond high school. Can you talk a little bit about how transition planning and these new requirements are important for parents and students in younger grades like middle school?
Absolutely correct, Lynn. I want to be clear that transition planning is not limited to high school age kids. It also affects younger students such as in middle school. Another change in state law worth mentioning now is that not only do schools need to talk about post-school goals, but also what courses would a student need to take to be in a position to reach those goals. We have to do better to equip the students with steps in school that will help the dreams after school become possible.
Moving on to our final topic about school safety. This summer there have been several committee hearings in both the Texas House and the Senate. A range of topics have been discussed, from emergency management plans to solutions for mental health personnel shortages in Texas. Our team at Disability Rights Texas, as well as other disability rights groups, have been active in these discussions. What are some of the ways that upcoming decisions by the legislature and by school districts in relation to school safety are particularly relevant to students with disabilities?
Thanks, Lynn. As we begin this review, of course, we want to say that we continue to think about all of those who are affected by school violence, we are trying to make contributions to the policy decisions that will be made this coming year by the legislature. In this area of school safety, one thing our followers are likely to hear more about as we get into the new school year are what are known as risk assessments or threat assessments. In general, what this means is efforts by school to evaluate a particular student and try to decide if that student might seriously hurt people at school. For students with mental health disabilities or other disabilities, this can be complicated because we know that sometimes misbehaviors are a manifestation of the disability. We want to focus on educational and behavioral interventions that help reduce or mitigate these behaviors so that they are not misinterpreted as a student with a mental health disability or other disability is violent or a danger to school. So we encourage parents to be on the lookout for news from your school district or your campus about the adoption of risk assessments or threat assessments. Ask how these assessments account for disability, and more importantly, what is being done for your child proactively to understand certain behaviors and have them addressed in an up-to-date behavioral intervention plan, sometimes known as a BIP, or to have them reviewed by professionals who are adept at behavior analysis. I also want to mention here that in this new school year, there will also be a lot of attention to school safety plans. One part of the plan usually deals with school building evacuations. If you have a child with a disability who might not be able to evacuate with other children in any sort of circumstance, whether it's school violence, severe weather, and their disability, physical or otherwise, makes that evacuation difficult, we encourage you to ask the school what are the accommodations in place to help your child, along with identifying the responsible staff who will ensure the safe evacuation of your child. So we have covered a lot of information today. There's actually a lot more that we did not say, but we tried to hit highlights, and hopefully everyone finds this helpful as we gear up for the new school year. Please feel free to post questions or comments, and we'll do our best to respond. Also, please watch for our Disability Rights Texas newsletter and the Back to School special edition, which will be coming soon. You can add your name to the mailing list by clicking on subscribe on our homepage of our website. Also, if you've not yet, we invite you to friend us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We post on many topics, including public education and special education. So for now, until we see you in class, enjoy your summer.